reporting process. So thank you everyone for attending the pre-proposal session for our Alexandria Fund for Human Services fiscal year 2024 and 2026. I do have a PowerPoint presentation that I will go ahead and put up right now. And if you are able to see the PowerPoint, can somebody give me a yes?
We see
Yes,
it.
we can see it.
Okay, thank you. So thank you again for joining. And since I have the power presentation on share, I am not able to see if anybody has a questions or when if somebody raises their hand. So I'm gonna rely on Debbie Anderson to be the person to break in and let me know if somebody has a question. So thank you. As again, this morning, we will go over the pre-proposal process for the Alexandria Fund for Human Service. And also we will engage in a logic model training from our colleagues from the Office of Performance and Analytics from the City of Alexandria. PowerPoint slide. Today's agenda is pretty packed, as you can see. We will have opening remarks by Kate Garvey, and I should say who I am. Actually, I'm Federico Gutierrez, and I am the Deputy Director for DCHS. We will have opening remarks by Kate Garvey, the DCHS Director. For those of you who are not familiar. We will talk a little bit about the Alexandria Fund for Human Services. We will also review the Fund for Human Services fiscal year 2024 through 2026 and our grant proposal process. Our program justification and forms that we need to have you submit. Our grant making tool, that is a grant making that's new for the for this session. So we have a grant making tool that is powered by Founded Technologies. Our application evaluation criteria and scoring section. We will also talk a little bit about what will happen when awards are made and what will happen after the award, the post-award section or session. We will also have, like I said before, a training and an overview of the logic model by our colleagues from the Office of Performance and Analytics through the City of Alexandria. And we will devote the remainder of the time for Q&A. So Kate, do you want to?
Thanks so much, Federico. I really appreciate it. And I'm so happy to see so many of you here today with us. This is an exciting day, something we've been awaiting for a while. And so we do hope that this is an informative session for you all. I want to do a couple acknowledgements. The reason that we're here and the way that we are here is both the support and major leadership from Federico Gutierrez and Debbie Brown Anderson, as well as a really phenomenal Fund for Human Services Reform Committee who really took time to look at what we've been doing in the past with the fund and to give us feedback and insight into ways that we could enhance what we've been doing. So we're really grateful to that entire committee who really did a phenomenal job for us. So you will see some differences, some changes, and not just with the content, but also as Federico shared, that we're using a tool that we hope is going to really make this process much easier for everyone. We've heard your feedback about needing to make our process less onerous and more user-friendly. We also had really a lot of interest in making sure that we had no barriers for any organization to apply. So we are hopeful that this Founded tool will help us get there, and that we are really focusing on the most critical needs, the most critical activities here in critical needs in the city. So we know that our city is made stronger because of all the work that you all do each day, and that we know that we cannot meet the needs of the city without you all. COVID could not have proved that more clearly, though we knew it already. It just made even more profound. So we are truly grateful for all the work that you all do, for all the resources you bring to bear, the commitment, and the high quality services that you provide. So we hope that you will all be successful, and that you'll bring forward projects that will continue to strengthen our city. So I'm just really grateful, and I hope this session is helpful to you all. And please do ask questions, because that helps us to clarify and to make sure that, again, that there are not barriers that keep you from being able to come forth with your work. So thanks so much, and I'll hand it back to you, Federico.
Thank you, Kate. I'm going to share my screen again. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the Alexandria Fund for Human Services, the Fund for Human Services, we basically aim to support the human services need for the city's most vulnerable residents across the lifespan, to advance conditions in their respective environments of origin, to ensure the well-being of individuals, their safety, their self-sustainability, and self-sufficiency through equitable process and practices. In essence, what we want to do is make sure that we address the need of individuals in their communities, where individuals go to school, where individuals worship, where individuals live. In essence, we want to make sure that we meet those needs. A little bit of an overview about the fund. The fund, as Kate noted, aims to expand the human services delivery system through this competitive grant cycle process, knowing in full well and recognizing that the city alone cannot meet the vital needs of the community. In essence, nonprofit partners in our community have a vital role in delivering services for individuals in the city. Currently, for this current fiscal year or this grant cycle, we have about $2 million devoted for this fund, and it supports over 40 programs that are managed by 34 nonprofit partners. The awards range anywhere between $10,000 and $263,000. So there is not a cap or ceiling for which you can apply for this. Historically, also, the grants have been supplemented in large part by the leveraging of additional funds by organizations by $4 to $5 million. The review grant submission and funding recommendations will be made by a committee that is made up of a cross-section of members from the city human services related boards and commissions. And the annual award amounts are contingent upon the city council appropriation and articulated priorities as they are being set right now. For the past 15 years, the award range has been between $1.9 and $2.2 million for funding requests. And typically, the funding request typically exceeds the available funds. So for the fund for FY 24 through 26, we are going to discuss what is new about the fund. And these are the new features for the fund that resulted from the Reform Committee recommendations, as Kate had noted before. We will touch upon and we will review the eligibility. There are some new components to that area. Obviously, the grant making tool and software use for this next cycle is as the result of the committee recommendations, because we want to enable individuals and organizations to have the ability to submit a grant proposal in a low threshold barrier scenario. Our funding priorities and focus populations were also a topic and something that we discussed through the reform committee recommendations. Data reporting and collecting, grant narrative, budget and attachments, and also the use of a logic model. That is also new to the grant for the Fund for Human Services. For the grant proposal for year 24 through 26, we will be discussing eligibility, funding priorities, focus population, the online application content. We will also be reviewing the grant narrative with all of you, the budget and attachments that must accompany the proposal, the data collection and reporting, other supporting documentations that we will have as we will discuss later on. We will take a look at the grant making tool, and I will walk you through how to create an account if you are not already familiar with this grant making tool. The application evaluation criteria and scoring that we will be using for this grant proposal cycle. Award expectations, and also the logic model training that will be done at the latter part of this presentation. So eligibility, this is an area that the reform committee looked into. The fund will support organizations in the community that are positioned to offer services that are sound in practice and innovative in the way services are delivered to respond to the emerging and critical human services challenges that are seen across our city. Organizations that are applying for funding may be based either in the city of Alexandria or in other jurisdictions. And again, but all the funding must be used to provide services to Alexandria residents. Organizations, public or private, with an IRS nonprofit determination are eligible to apply for the fund. An organization interested in submitting a grant application as first step will need to complete a pre-application screening in the grant portal to confirm eligibility. And I will walk you through that process when we get to that portion of the presentation. In addition, we would ask that organizations governing body, such as a board of directors, must approve the grant submission. Grant priorities were an area that were looked through a fine lens through the use of the reform committee work, and the proposed program services. The proposed program and services will address the following grant priorities. All children and youth are school ready, which includes children between the ages of 0 and 5. All Alexandrians that are socially connected, emotionally secure, and culturally competent. All Alexandrians are economically secure and career ready. All Alexandrians have access to physical, dental, mental health, and vision resources and services. And all Alexandrians are assisted in and empowered to prevent and remedy crises. This will include food insecurity, evictions, and financial crisis. As it relates to the focus population, grant awards are made for proposals that address one of the following focus population for this grant cycle, which will include children and youth, individuals with low income and low wealth, individuals with dental, physical health, mental health, and vision need care, individuals facing crises, survivors of domestic violence and sexual assaults, older adults, and or historically marginalized communities. This population may include, but not limited to, BIPOC communities, immigrant population, which may include those who lack documentation or families with mixed status, just as involved individual, LGBTQIA plus population, persons with disability across the lifespan, to include support for caregivers as well, and individuals with limited English proficiency, unhoused, the housing insecure, or housing cost burden. I'm going to talk a little bit about the online application content. So those areas that you see on the left hand side of the column are all the information that must be contained, and there should be fillable items within the grant tool. Those are that is information related to your organization and your organization's ability to provide information, and we will review that. So we obviously won't have you fill out your organization's legal name, first, whether or not you are first applying for the fund, your organization mailing address. So these are all the rudimentary areas that we will ask. On the right-hand column, you have the amount, we have the amount requested for the proposed program project, the joint application content, as well as if this is a joint application, we will ask that partner organization's name, partner organization's address, and organization's information be included. Tease with my PowerPoint. So for the online application content, the fund priority that you are proposing needs to be stated, and we will be walking through that. And only one grant application per priority will be accepted. You will also be addressing the proposed focus populations, and applicants must select all that apply. We are asking also that the zip codes where the individual or the interventions will be the proposed program or services and support will be noted. The proposed and program abstract, we're asking for organizations to submit a proposed program abstract that will address the problem that you are proposing, the approach and key activities you utilize in your proposed program or service, the intended focus population that you will be addressing, the organizational capacity and current practices related to the specialized skills, staffing, and ability to effectively reach and engage the proposed focus population, and also describe the confirmed partner agency. So for joint applications, there is a separate section in the grant portal that you and the partner organization will be completing. The grant narrative is made up of 9 discrete sections with character limits, and those will focus on obviously on the focus population. We will ask you to describe the program or services and how this will benefit the focus population. The human services need being met by your proposal. We would ask that you describe key activities and approaches for the desired program activity and services. Advancing equity, we will like to learn more about and include a description on how the proposed program for service provision will support the advancement of equity in the city of Alexandria. Outreach and engagement, we're asking for you to describe how your organization currently, and current practice will enable effective reach to the proposed focus population. For the section on collaboration, organizations may choose to partner with other organizations, and we would ask that you describe your proposal, how your proposal demonstrate the collaboration with other identified partners and service providers in the community to strengthen the human services need and systems. And again, for joint applications, we ask that you describe the collaboration, the role, and the responsibility of each partnering organization. For joint applications within the portal, there is a separate section that you will be completing along with your partner organization. Participant voice and program service design and implementation. In this section of the application, we are asking for you to describe the role, if any, that the participants played in the design of the proposed program or service provision, and how they will continue to influence and govern the program activities. For organizational capacity, we would like to learn more about how the grant award strengthens your organization's capacity beyond the delivery of the proposed programs, complement other programs and services your organization already delivers. Maximizing efficiencies, we would like to learn more about how the organization will leverage other community resources to maximize service delivery and minimize duplication of services across the city. Fiscal and organizational management, we would like to learn a little bit more about for you to identify the key managerial, governance, and financial accountability policies and procedures for your organization. Again, for example, the background of the board members and qualifications of senior management, the quality of accounting and audit systems that you have in your organization, and the organization's track record of successfully managing grants. Debbie, do I have any questions? Do we have any questions in the chat?
None so far, Federico.
Thank you. So we are going to go next on the program attachment, budget, and justifications and forms that must accompany the submission. For data collection and reporting, funded organizations will commit to collect and include in the requirement report specific data as designated by the city that will include but not limited to zip codes of the program and services beneficiaries, ages and race, ethnicity of population supported by this grant, the number of individuals or households served. In addition, data collection will be relevant and reflect grantee-specific grant-funded work. We will also like to ensure that the focus areas of interest and populations are being served by the fund. And templates will be provided through this process using templates that will be uploaded to the grant portal. Training will be held with grantees to provide clarification to ensure the transparency about reporting requirements before the grant year starts. And an annual meeting will be held with grantees and the City Office of Performance Analytics to discuss existing trends, data issues, and future data needs. Again, grant recipients will be required to submit two reports, a mid-year report and also a year-end report that will provide program and services performance and expenditure information and data relevant to the work that's being done. The mid-year report is due by January 31st of the grant cycle, and then the year-end report is due by July 31st of the grant cycle, respectively. Debbie?
Thank you, Federico. Included with your response to the questions that Federico has walked you through, there are several supporting attachments and finally an attestation that all grant applicants must make prior to submittal. So the first attachment, which is new in terms of the format to the fund, is your proposed expenses form. So we are asking for both your proposed expense and revenue forms, two separate forms. In the past, it was one document. They're now broken out into expense foreshadowing and revenue foreshadowing. And we're asking you to forecast over the 3 years in the grant cycle, not just for the first year, but to foreshadow your expenses for the 3 years of the grant cycle and to foreshadow your proposed revenues for the 3 years of the grant cycle. If applicable, we're asking for your IRS nonprofit determination letter. Also, which is a new threshold for the fund, is a copy of your most recent external audit. For organizations now with a budget of less than $250,000, you may, in lieu of an external audit, submit your board-approved year-end financial statement or your most recent the most recent copy of your IRS 990, which is a new, we've increased the threshold on that. We also would like a copy of your organization's FY23, this current fiscal year's operating budget. New to the fund also is a copy, if available, of your organization's annual report. We would like a roster of your board of directors. That's the names and their association. And if you are submitting a joint application, a memorandum of understanding or a letter of collaboration or commitment, we may use the term interchangeably, should also be uploaded. And if you are seeking funds for a child care related services, then we need to see the evidence of your participation in the Virginia Quality Birth to 5 process. And finally, you're going to be asked to attest to the veracity of the information that you provided in the application. Federico, we have several questions that I didn't monitor, but I will get back to those if you're ready to go to the next slide.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Again, with the budget and the budget justification, so what we're asking for is, one, that in a narrative form, you're going to justify the funds that you're requesting, and then support it with an Excel spreadsheet that we're providing with formulas already embedded in it. So again, we're foreshadowing across the three years in the grant cycle. And in your narrative, you'll see that we have some very specific questions that we're asking you to respond to. If you're a joint applicant, then we want to also see in your narrative that any shared costs, any costs that are going to be distributed amongst the partners. So you're describing that in your narrative. There's not a place for that in your budget form, but we want to see that in your narrative. And finally, in your narrative, we want to hear about the consequences of partial funding and what that may look like for you if you are not in a position to, if we're not in a position to give you the full funding of what's being requested, which 9 times out of 10 will be the case, unfortunately. In my time with the fund, I've rarely seen full funding go forward because we've have so many requests with that. And finally, the grant awards for the 2 subsequent years will be one based on your performance in your first year, and also funding availability. So these funds that are awarded to us are appropriated annually by City Council. So we have to, if an adjustment is made to the fund, then that is passed along to the grant recipient. So again, it's performance that will be the criteria for your subsequent year's funding, and then the availability of appropriation to the department. I think that's it, Federico.
Thank you. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the grant making tool that is run by Fund Dent Technology. The grant making tool is a portal that you will be submitting your application for FY 24 through 26. It's a one-stop shop. We would like to think of it as in those terms, that will be using, that organizations will have an opportunity to manage the entire grant making process in one secure portal. This tool will also provide organizations with the ability to submit grant proposals and all required attachments for the proposal. In addition, this portal is what we will be using across the grant proposal cycle for organizations to submit their mid-year and year-end reports. We are asking also that all submissions will only be accepted, or grant proposal submissions will only be accepted via the Fund Dent Technology grant application portal, and grant applications may not be submitted in person, by U.S. Postal Service, courier, email, or fax, or any other form except for the use of the grant making tool. This is the first year, as noted before, that we are using a grant making tool for this project. So we welcome all the feedback that you may have along the way. And I will provide at the end of the session the email where you may submit that information. When you get to the link for the, so this is I'm going to walk you a little bit through the process on how to not only get started, but also what the portal looks like. So when you get started, once you have access to the link, you will see a logon page with the City of Alexandria logo on top. You will not have, obviously, an email address or a password at that point. You will need to create a new account. You will click on the create a new account, and it will take you to a you will fill the email address where you wish to have your logon information to be delivered. Once you access that, you will go through the process of creating a new account. You will complete all sections of the page, the information related to your organization, your user information, and also information about the executive officer questions. All fields designated with an asterisk need to be completed in order for you to move on to the next section. Once this section is complete, you will be prompted to the eligibility page. The eligibility page is a set of 2 screening questions that we have. And the questions are, is your organization a nonprofit organization? You will do yes or no. And does your proposed project take place inside the city limits of the city of Alexandria? And for the purposes of this fund, all projects must take place inside of the city limits. Once you answer those questions, you hit next. When you if you are successful in passing the screening sections, you will be prompted to the apply section of the portal. You will know that you are in the application section when you see the applicant dashboard page, which looks like this. And we would ask you to please select the Alexandria Fund for Human Services fiscal year 2024 to 2026 request for grant proposals, and you may hit apply. We do share the portal with the arts program, so you will see two grant applications in the same portal. We would ask you to please click on the apply section that is applicable to the Alexandria Fund for Human Services fiscal year 2024 through 2026. In the application page, you will be able to begin your entire grant proposal application. You will have a section that is devoted to instructions. And when you have a click down, this is a click down menu, you will be provided with instructions. You will have the section where your application cover sheet, as noted before, this is the information related to your organization. You will also have the application narratives, and this is where you will submit the answers to the 9 questions that were reviewed before. The application evaluation criteria and scoring. A committee external to DCHS will review all grant applications and make award recommendations. Obviously, this is a competitive grant application process, and we are using established criteria. The panel will review and evaluate the grant applications and make funding recommendations based on those established criteria. The panel will receive feedback from DCHS program and finance staff as appropriate. If they have any questions, we have internal staff that can provide support. And all grant proposals will be reviewed and certified before they move on to the external evaluation process. Applicants submitting incomplete grant proposals will be notified immediately that their grant proposal has been deemed ineligible. And there are some criteria or guidelines where we will deem ineligible grant proposals. And those may be guidelines for proposal or content or attachments were not followed as specified by the grant proposal. The attachment or attachments submitted do not comply with the guidelines as we have requested, or your proposal may be deemed ineligible if the attachment submitted did not contain all of the complete information or the field. For example, if a budget is missing some specific areas that we need information on. The application evaluation and criteria and scoring is available for your review in our DCHS website. We have a portion dedicated to the fund, and individuals we are awarding a maximum of 100 points, and we are evaluating all grant applications based on various criterias. On focus population, Is your proposal articulating and demonstrates that the focus population of attention is being addressed? Human services need being met? Is your proposal clearly articulating that you are advancing equity in some aspects for organizations that are collaborating? Does the proposal describe active collaboration between and among service providers? And for joint applicants, the proposal will need to describe the collaboration, the role and responsibility for each of the partnering organizations, and we will need an MOU or a letter of commitment, as Debbie noted previously. Is your proposal maximizing efficiencies? So we are looking for proposals that discuss noteworthy or innovative approaches on how the proposed programs or services will enhance organizational efficiencies and cost effectiveness. Fiscal and organizational management. We are looking for proposals that provide insight about key managerial and governors of your organization. Outreach and engagement. Does your proposal convey the organizational capacity and current practices, including specialized skills, staffing, and ability to effectively reach and engage the proposed focus population? Voice in program and service design and implementation. Does the proposal detail the role program participants or stakeholders played in the development of the proposed program or the services that you are submitting? And the organizational capacity. Does the proposal keenly address how the fund grant will serve to strengthen the organization's capacity and complement other programs in our community? I'm going to talk a little bit about the awards portion and also the post-award. All organizations that will be awarded, an intent to award letter will be sent through the grant making tool. So you will be able to see through the use of the tool whether or not your organization was awarded. We will also ask that at the time prior to the after the award is done, we will ask you to modify your program and goals and budgets based on the awards amount, as Debbie mentioned. This award amounts are dictated by the by City Council's budget. A grant agreement will be executed at that point, and grant recipients are required to maintain program and fiscal record. For those awarded programs, recipients are required to submit 2 reports per year, as noted before, a midterm and a year-end report, and noting their successes in achieving the desired outcomes. Also, the board members should also receive and review program and financial reports. And after following the award, we will have 2 trainings that we will be offering internally for those programs awarded. There are 2 mandatory trainings per grant year. Those will take place in the fall of 2023 and in the spring of 2024. A post-award session will be held in June of 2023 with all new grantees. During this session, the grantees will be provided with an overview of the terms and conditions of the fund, grant monitoring and evaluation, instructions on how to submit the reporting requirements using the online grant making tool. So we will have a tutorial session for new grantees on how to submit all the required documentation online, and also invoicing information. Invoicing is a process that that is carried out by through 2 installments. Audits and record-keeping requirements for the fund. The city's policy that the Office of Internal Audit maintain a repository of audited financial statements for organizations receiving city funding. For each year during the grant cycle, grant recipients must submit within 45 days of board approval a copy of their organization's annual audit report, management letter, or year-end fiscal or year-end financial statement, rather, directly to the Office of Internal Audit. Organizations with an annual operating budget of $250,000 or less may submit most recent board-approved year-end financial statement or most recent IRS Form 990. Grant recipients are expected to retain all books, records, and other documents relative to this grant cycle for 3 years after the final payment for each grant period, or until audited by the city, whichever is earlier. And the city's authorized agent and/or auditor must have full access to and the right to examine any programmatic or fiscal or financial records officially or specifically related to the grant or the same period. Okay, so we get to the portion where we are going to be talking a little bit about the logic model presentation. And I will turn it over to Catherine Key from the Office of from OPA, or Office of Analytics with the City of Alexandria. Again, a logic model is a new format that we have that was recommended by the Reform Committee, and in essence, it's a new requirement. It's a tool that is used to visualize the connection between the planned components of the intervention or project and the intended results. And Catherine will and her team will talk a little bit more about that. And go, I'm sorry.
Federico.
We can jump in.
Federico,
Okay, perfect.
Federico, before Catherine and team starts, let me just acknowledge that there are multiple questions regarding the audit and the submission of financial statements. We do have our colleagues from the city's Office of Internal Audit on the line, and they are taking notes of these questions. And just so you'll know that we will consult further with the office and post the responses to the audit related questions in the FAQs as soon as we can, but we don't want to misspeak on those questions. So the Office of City Internal Audit they're recording your questions, and we will give you those answers in the FAQ. So the others we can respond to during the question and answer period. So I just wanted to acknowledge that right up front.
Okay, thank you. Catherine and team, would you like to take over then?
Yeah, sounds good. I'll be kicking us off actually. And while Josh, yep, there it is. Thank you, Josh. I'm Eli Smith from the Office of Performance and Analytics, joined by my two colleagues, Catherine Key and Josh Ferguson. And just going to talk to you a little bit about logic models. Federico gave a good preface. And we've sort of just collaborated a little bit with DCHS on coming up with this strategy and this template. So going to start out just why logic models. These are going to help visualize the connection between the planned program and the intended results. So logic models, they can be an effective tool to assist with program planning, implementation, and evaluation. In addition, they're gonna sort of help define a common language in the setup, the components of your program, so that sort of we and you can be on the same page about things with that. They're going to help test assumptions. So say you've got assumptions about how your resources and your activities connect to your outputs and your impacts. This is going to help you break it down in a logical way to say, does it make sense for us to say we're getting from these things to these things? Same thing with matching your program to the stated goals of the fund. We're going to break that out in the logic model to sort of be able to logically and visually say, do these things get from the beginning to the end in a way that makes sense. They're going to help with indicator development, and in a moment we'll talk a little bit more to that, but there's going to be a few particular sections of the logic model that are going to help identify those. We sort of understand that often with these things, the goal of the program might be something very lofty and sort of hard to measure. Like, for example, say the goal is solve hunger in Alexandria. That's something that has a lot of factors and is not very measurable. This model is going to identify sort of smaller, more specific activities that are measurable, like say, hot meals distributed or something like that. This is also considered a best practice in nonprofit and government grant writing, as well as grants in the academic field. And I did actually see, for example, a local grant by the DC office, State Superintendent of Education for charter schools. They provide a template very similar to what we're going to be providing to you all for applying to grants with them. And with that, I will pass it over to Catherine.
Thanks, Eli. As Eli just mentioned at the end, this is kind of best practice across lots of different industries. So you'll see lots of different templates online. I'm sure a lot of you have probably interacted with logic models before. What we have on the screen is the template that we worked with DCHS to complete. And I'll walk you through this together, and then we'll walk through a couple of examples. So at the very top, you'll see the project title up there. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. That's where you'll put the title of your specific project. We also ask that you put under that in the grant priority, which of the grant priorities that your project is targeting. Federico mentioned a couple of those, or mentioned them at the top of the presentation. They're also available on the application, but that just helps us keep track. We'll also ask you right under that to put what your target population is. As Federico said, you might have several different target populations. And so we ask you to list those here, again, as a way to kind of think about it and make sure that you're enumerating it all together. All right, so then we have 5 boxes that are the real meat of the logic model. Most of the time, I like to work right from left, but as you'll see, this is actually a very flexible tool. You can work I like to work from left to right. You can also start at the end and work right from left. We really just, this is a kind of a thought exercise that we think is really a great practice to put in as you're developing your programs or as you're thinking about how to connect your programs to our greater goals. So starting on that left side box at inputs and resources, This is where you'll list what the resources that you'll need to complete the project. This could be staff. I think for most people, it's going to be staff and staff hours. There may be, as Eli said, if you're doing something like food distribution, that would be where you would put the different supplies that you need for that. But that is inputs and resources. Next, you'll talk about activities. So what are you going to do with these resources that you have? This is probably where people, you have a kind of a sense, especially if you're coming into this grant with a specific, this grant proposal with a specific project in mind, you probably have some ideas of what activities that you're going to want to do. Is that you're hosting college ready sessions? Are you distributing food? Are you providing daycare? All of these types of things that will go into your activities. Now, with each of your activities, next you'll think about what are the direct product of those activities, and that's going to be your output. Keeping again with a very simple idea of if we're looking at like I said, college readiness sessions, like education sessions, your outputs will be the number of people who attended, the number of sessions that you held. Again, these are ones that are directly connected to those activities. Next, you'll have outcomes. We like to think of these as kind of your short-term impact. So what are the changes in learning and in actions that you expect your program to have? Are you expecting people to come away with better fire preparedness? Are you expecting people to be able to have access to childcare? Things like that. And then we have the long term, which is we have impact. So that's in the far right. So what are the long-term changes that you believe your work work towards the selected grant priority? So again, as Eli mentioned, some of our grant priorities can be really large goals that we have to work towards as an entire city. It's not something that one organization or one program is going to be able to accomplish. But I really think here is where you need to connect the logic of these short-term outcomes that are going to be the direct product of your different program, again, to those long-term, I like to think of them as long-term changes in behaviors or in the conditions of our city that are then getting us towards the grant priority. Okay, so let's go through, we'll start with a silly example to walk through this first. This is going to be my project that I'm calling headache relief, because if I have a headache, my project is to get rid of it. The grant priority is going to be a healthy community because I'm a part of the community, and if I'm healthy, that's contributing to it. The target population is going to be me. So let's start with this. So if I have a headache, some of the resources or inputs into my program would be things like water, a hot compress, aspirin, a quiet place. I was talking to my boss. He said, someone to take care of the children, to not bother him. Those are the types of inputs that we have. The activities that I'm going to do for this project headache relief are going to be drink my water, put a hot compress on my face, on my head, take an aspirin, and sit in a quiet room for a little while. So what are some of the outputs? What are those immediate things that are coming from those activities? The number of glasses of water that I've consumed, the number of hot compresses that I've used, the number of aspirin I've taken, the number of minutes that I spent in a quiet room. So you see how these outputs are the direct result of those activities that I undertook. So now let's talk about the short-term outcomes that I'm expecting. Hopefully, if I've had a decent number of glasses of water, I'm going to be hydrated. I'm going to feel more relaxed. And hopefully in that short term, my headache goes away. All right, so those are the kind of short-term outcomes that I'm expecting, again, from those direct activities. So what's the long-term kind of impact? And again, we have to make a little bit of a logical leap between that outcomes and that impact. In the long term, I'm happier and I'm healthier, and that's bringing us back to our healthy community priority. So that's a little bit of a silly example. But I think probably a good way of realizing that this is just a way to logically think through what your program is doing. And again, having us connect it back to that grant priority of the overall fund and honestly the overall priorities of our city. So I'll hand it over to my colleague Josh now to maybe walk through probably an example that mirrors a few more projects with people on the call.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. I'll talk a little bit more now on an example that's a little more in the human services world. In this case, what we chose as an example is food distribution as our project. Like Catherine kind of said, we'll take that back and you go, what's the grant priority that this is connected to? In this case, it'd be all Alexandrians are assisted in preventing and remedying crisis. This includes food insecurity, evictions, financial crisis, so pretty relevant to then our project. And you identify the target, one of the target populations or a number of the target populations from the list that's provided in the application. In this case, we chose individuals facing crisis. And for this example, like Catherine said, this is the logic model can kind of either work forwards or backwards. You can kind of work from, I have these resources and inputs and kind of how do I map that out to eventually get an impact? Or in a lot of cases, it can work from, I know what my impact, I want my impact to be, I know what it needs to be. How do I kind of think through the process of what gets me there and kind of work the other way around, starting to impact all the way back to what are the resource and inputs that I need? Or how do I explain these things that I am using and are leading to that? So in this case, I'll kind of walk through this example from the other direction, started at impact, which in the case for a food distribution program, the impact we're hoping to have would be reduce the cost burden of food for households, to increase funds available for other household priorities. We want to make sure that food is affordable and accessible and that people can use, have available money to address all their other needs and not be overly burdened. So with that impact in mind, you'd kind of take the next step back and think about, okay, what are the short-term outcomes that need to happen that would ensure that impact is real, that is realized? So some things could be an increase in residents with access to food, more families that are receiving SNAP benefits, maybe a reduced number of repeat households utilizing a food distribution program that would indicate that what we're doing is being effective and is leading towards that impact in the big picture. Kind of, the next kind of step back and kind of getting more practical and more on point of what's happening are the outputs. So really, what have we done? What has something we've kind of put together? Outputs then is pounds of food distributed, number of households that are receiving the food, and maybe number of families that we've helped enroll in SNAP as a program. Logically, kind of as this works, you kind of think about what are the activities that I need to do to create those outputs. Got to collect food. We need to pack and distribute bags of groceries, other household items, and maybe also then one of the activities we'll be providing SNAP application assistance. In the same kind of thought process, what are the inputs, resources that I need in order to carry out those activities? I need staff, volunteers, I need some space, probably also need some donations of food and household items. So you can see it can go either direction. It's kind of just about how do we connect the different aspects of a program. And also my big picture really is explaining that, making the case for how this connects to the grant priority, how the program is something as you're applying for it that's going to help accomplish these bigger picture priorities. Eli mentioned also at the start of the discussion on logic models that we're looking for indicators. So there's hoping to have organizations part of the application at FI3 indicate measurable indicators that demonstrate the progress, demonstrate the effectiveness of their programs. That's something they'll track throughout. And the outputs and outcome sections of the logic model are also really helpful for identifying those. These are things that ideally are measurable, or something that you as a programmer are already able to keep track of, and it helps to tell the story of where you guys are having an impact or where the work you're accomplishing. So outputs is a little more on the practical. This shows kind of the amount of work, the amount of things that we're doing. Outcomes gets a little bit more into the impact, a little bit more into what, are we changing? But ideally, both of those are somewhat measurable. And as you can see on here, are things that in theory a program could be tracking and could share as a way of demonstrating kind of the work and the accomplishments that they're having in order to make progress towards these big picture grant priorities. And I think that's all we have for right now. I don't know, I can't see the chat right now. Catherine, are there any questions we've had?
We do have 2 questions in the chat specifically about logic models. We'll right after us, I promise, is the Q&A for the entire section. But for the entire grant. But Tom asked, is there a specific number of inputs/resources that is required on logic models? No, there's not. And that's actually one of the reasons that we like the logic model. Josh, will you go back one slide? We're not going to be prescriptive in how many that you need, especially for the inputs and the resources. We really do see this as a tool for you to be able to communicate how your project is achieving a grant priority. As you'll see in the application, you are required to select 3 indicators. Again, as we've said, that can come from your outputs, can come from your outcomes, but that's kind of the only numeric requirement when looking at a logic model. Mary asked, are we asked to present methods for measuring the outcomes in addition to the outputs, or just the outcome goals? So I can also take this, but Frederico and Debbie. Yeah, no, Frederico and Debbie will have to let me know if I'm misspeaking. But Mary, my understanding is that you will have to have a data plan for whichever indicators you select. It sounds like kind of yes. So it depends on which indicators you select. So if your indicators are coming from outputs, you need to have a data plan for how you're going to say the outputs. If you select one of your outcomes, you'll also need to be collecting that information. But let's say this organization, let's take the example on the screen right now. If you did not decide to put increase in residents with access to food as your indicator, so you weren't requiring you were not asking yourself to measure, all of Alexandria's access to food, then you don't have to figure out a collection method to do that. Instead, if you said, we want to be able to track the number of families we enroll in SNAP, then yes, you would need to find a way to collect that information. But we are trying to make it flexible based off of the type of information and the way that your program is currently set up, because we realize there's a large amount, a diversity of projects that are applying for these grants.
Correct. So to piggyback on what Catherine was saying, this is about your project proposal and also to develop your own outputs and outcomes, and how you will be tracking those along the way. So we're not being prescriptive on what it is that you need to assign to each one of these boxes.
Hey, Catherine, there is one other question. Should answers on the logic model be short and simple, like this example?
I mean, I think that's kind of up to the organization and the complexity of the project. I think what I would say as a person who used to get graded on the logic models that she would submit for class is that you just want it to be something that if you were to hand it to Josh Ferguson on the street, that they would be able to say, okay, this is where you're starting and this is kind of where you're ending up. I don't think you need to overcomplicate things. You just need to make sure that anyone, including the committee that's going to be reviewing your application, that they can really see where you're connecting the activities that you're doing to that grant priority.
Thank you. And I think the key point with this, it's both for us, for those who are reviewing the application, absolutely to see you have a methodology, it is clear, and it can be presumed that the activities that you've planned, the resources you're asking for do lead to that outcome, but it's also in support of your thinking through your project too. So really trying to press ourselves to say, these are key steps that we actually think presumably would lead, to these good outcomes. So it's really to service both elements of planning and decision making.
And there was another question, where are the indicators? Indicators are found in the grant application itself, and also can be found on our website. Any other questions about the logic model and the process? So thank you, team, for doing that. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. for the latter part of this presentation. I wanted to review with all of you key dates and important dates that we have ahead of us. Obviously, on March 17th, the notice of funding availability and request for the grant was issued. That's when the clock started ticking. Obviously, today we are conducting the virtual pre-proposal and logic model training. The application submission deadline is April 17th, 2023 at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we will, a team of us will start the grant application certification and review period between April 18th and May 19th. Grant award notices and agreements will be provided to successful applicants, and post-award trainings will be done in the period of June, in the month of June, and also the grant cycle for this funding period is July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2026. So now we get to any questions that you may have related to what we just reviewed are welcome.
So we do have a couple we didn't answer from that are in the chat.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, Frederica, we do have some in the chat that are not audit or financial related. And the first one is from Mary, and she said, what if it is difficult to gather some of the required demographic information in our proposed project or initiative for reporting?
So what we're asking for individuals to do is to, in essence, for related to the zip code, where the intervention is going to take place. So we're asking for individuals to keep track of the where the interventions will be provided, or where where the interventions are being also recipient of the interventions. That's part of what we are asking all of you to keep track of. Go ahead, Kate.
Yeah, and I think it may also be in terms of the reporting related to those who are being supported and served in the grant. And so the expectation is to do everything possible to be able to gather that information. We recognize that there are some barriers and some challenges with individuals who may not want to provide specific information. The expectation is that is attempted, and looking for other proxies, other ways to demonstrate that you're really connecting with the target population that you committed to. So we could have discussion about what those challenges are, how could they be overcome, and then how can we sort of get a sense of what's actually occurring if it's difficult to get that standard information.
Any other questions, Debbie, that you can?
Yes, the next question is from Jennifer Brown, and she's asking, what is the composition of the external review committee scoring the applications? Will it be comprised of subject matter experts, Alexandria citizens, government employees?
So that the committee will be made up of boards and commissions, boards and commissions that are related to DCHS, and partners represent also subject matter experts.
Thank you, Kate. The next question is from Lisa Jacobs. Are MOUs or letters from partners not in joint applications, but otherwise useful or encouraged?
Correct. Letters of support are encouraged for partnering organizations. They are required for joint applicants.
And let me just piggyback on that one. If you are in fact proposing that you're going to host sponsor a program in a site that is not yours, then we need to see evidence that that space has been committed by the site in which you're referencing. So if you're proposing that you're going to be sponsoring recreation center-based programs, then we do need to see evidence of the Recreation Department's commitment to that space in advance. All right, the next question is from Laura and said, when completing the 3-year budget, should request amount remain the same, or should we build in a 3% increase as an example? So if a salary is at 45 in year 1 and the 3% increase would go to 46.35, should they be showing that?
Well, unfortunately, no, because the funding is static. The size of the budget. Now, if you wanted to represent a different dependence on this source of funding with your budget, you could do that, but we would not be seeing escalation or increase of the budget over time because our funding remains the same each year.
Thank you, Kate. The next one, I think we answered Lisa's question about the logic model, short and simple examples. Nora is asking, is there a section for letters of recommendation? We're not asking for letters of recommendations in as much as we're asking for letters of collaboration and support to evidence that you're either collaborating in a joint application way or you're collaborating to make your proposal come to life. And if that is if that is the case, then there is a section that clearly says where you are to upload your collaborative letters, your MOUs, or those kinds of supporting documents. I think we answered Tom's question about the number of inputs and resources. I think we've answered Mary's question about the method for measuring outcomes. And the question about where are the indicators. The indicators can be found. Let me just say that please take a minute and carefully review the request for proposal document that can be found on our website, because the same information that we've given you today is embodied in that RFQ guidance document. But the indicators, the examples of indicators can be found in that document. We will upload a separate document if it is desirable that isolates the example indicators and put that in the application toolbox. But for right now, there's a chart in the RFGP that shows the examples of the indicators. Oh, the next question is, how do you apply for multiple grants on the portal? Frederico, you got that one? Well, let me apologize for Frederico. He sent me a text and Microsoft Teams did not care that Frederico was in the middle of a pre-proposal conference and he has gone to updates. So he has gone offline because his computer is being updated. So my apologies to him. So you can, when you go into your application, there is a step that we show in the application that talks about copying your application. So you're able to copy your application and resubmit another application based on your new area that you want to address. So there's a copy function in the portal that tells you how to just copy your basic application cover information, and then you can go right to the next grant priority that you would like to address and begin to answer those questions related to that priority. So if you're having trouble with that, then please use our DCHS questions portal to alert us to that. But we did our best to show you how to copy the front part of your application and make your subsequent submission. Again, one application per one grant priority. Last question that I have. ACPS is starting their spring break Friday the 31st, along with other local systems who we may partner. It may be difficult to gather data and signature because the school's offices are closed. Is there any flexibility?
Not for the submission deadline. I think, you know, if you can indicate in some other way, you know, what the partnership is. I don't know if they, when you're saying signatures, if it's a collaborative application, that would be very important. But you would at least have, I guess, a week prior to the due date that they would be back in session. So I think if you know, the communication with them to get that set up, we couldn't extend the deadline. I guess that's the bottom line. But I think if you can convey the partnership in some other way, if it is not a collaborative application, then that would be acceptable. I hope I'm answering your question.
Yeah, unfortunately, once the grant process deadline has expired, we don't have an opportunity to open it back up for uploads. So Kate is absolutely right. If you could tee that up now with your partners, and if you're not able to get a signed document, but do your very, very best to give the external reviewers and to certify as a great confidence that this is a supported collaboration. But I would encourage you to work on that right now so that you can upload that. If you're planning to submit a joint application, it is an absolute requirement for joint applications. I think I have gotten all the programmatic questions. We will again consult with the Office of Internal Audit on the financial and the audit related questions, and as quickly as possible get the answers to those questions posted on our FAQs. Our FAQs are housed on the grant website, and what we may be able to do, I can't make a promise, but we may be able to get these specific questions answered through a group email back to you. I can't make that complete promise, but definitely it'll be electronically responded to on our webpage within 48 hours. So we will immediately get with the Office of Internal Audit and answer those questions. Again, any other questions that you would have subsequent to this session, please use the DCHS Alex Fund email address, and we will answer those questions as quickly as possible.
Debbie, I do have the information on the PowerPoint.
Yes.
So again, if you have any other questions related to this presentation or the grant process, please email it to DCHS alexfund@alexandriava.gov. In the subject line of the email, please state the nature of your inquiry so we are able to get to it quickly. And responses to all the questions will be posted within 48 hours in our FAQ document on the Alexandria Fund for Human Services website, which may be found embedded within the DCHS website. And all correspondence will be sent from our fund email address. So please check your junk email folder if you did not get your answer within a timely fashion of 48 hours.
And I do want to just repeat that the questions are very helpful to us as we're making changes. We're using a new tool. Some of you may be new to the process, so the more questions, quite frankly, the better. Then we can make sure that we've got everybody as fully informed in the process as possible. And particularly if there are things that that you pick up that either are not clear or you're actually finding an error, we really appreciate you letting us know right away so that we can get everybody the right information. So there's no barrier in individuals applying. So we really are asking for that assistance. It's not a negative, it's helpful to us to get your feedback and questions. Any comments or feedback now? Hoping that this was helpful. Anything that any of you want to share, say that you would have had a little more of in this session or a little less of? Okay. So it was perfect, right? Ah. Great, thank you. Okay, good. All right, that's great to hear back. Okay. Well, we really appreciate it. And again, we are grateful to all of you for all that you're doing each day, and really hope that this process is a smooth one, an accessible one, and gives you the opportunity to get the support you need to do the work that you're doing. So thank you so much for participating.
Thank you, everyone.
And like Federico said, check your spam.
Yes, please do.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a
Take
good
care.
day. Bye-bye.